Hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Thursday, May 8th, 2025, the 128th day of the year, the second of 5 Thursdays this month, and day 2 of the papal conclave in Vatican City. We very likely will have a new pope today. Several Newsmax hosts and reporters have been bringing you coverage from St. Peter's Square the last few days. Newsmax CEO Chris Ruddy is also there. He talked about why this is so important and what President Trump told him about the new pope.
There are so many people in St. Peter's Square, so much enthusiasm in the air here in Rome. Your thoughts on the historic moment that we are witnessing?
A picking of a pope is a major event in a moment, not in current events, but in world history, right? And we don't know. The last pope was very, very monumental in his impact on the Catholic Church in the world. And I think everybody's looking forward to what this next pope will be. So there's a huge amount of anticipation. And I think it's important not just for Catholics, but Christians, every religion around the world, because the pope, it is a religion, but it's also a state. Vatican City. So we're having a tremendous amount of interest from our viewers, and we're, I think, providing a lot of coverage.
What made you decide to do that? I mean, the coverage that, because of you, you're the CEO that we've been covering this, and why do you feel that it is so important?
Well, if you go back to when John Paul II was named Pope and Paul VI, that was like a major nonstop news event in the United States. All the major networks covered it nonstop. The old days, they're getting away from news events and going to these scripted programs or local talk shows, and we're really filling the void of what the old news used to provide Americans, which is on major topics. We're covering very fully and in depth.
Well, clearly the media plays a very important role in this entire process and how the message is delivered to the entire world.
Yes, and I think the Pope, sets the stage. Catholics, there's over 1 billion Catholics. It's one of the largest religious groups in the United States. I think it's the largest single denomination in the United States. So it's got a tremendous amount of impact on politics. Look, I would say we saw the rise of woke ideology around the world in the West. The Pope Francis played a big role in that. He was a big advocate for climate change, DEI policies. He's now leaving.
Open borders.
Open borders. And President Trump is an anti-woke president. And I think a lot of people are wondering, are we going to have the next pope be, I don't want to say a MAGA pope, but to say a pope that's not so woke?
So in terms of getting back toward more biblical truth and less relativism, you think that that's clearly the direction that the church hopefully will be going in as we go from the Francis papacy to this new papacy?
Well, I'm a Catholic. I have my own personal views. They're not the network's views. I think a more traditional pope. It's funny, I was chatting with President Trump last week about this subject, and we were laughing, and he said that he would make a good pope, and I said he would, but first he would have to become a Catholic. But he said to me, I'd really like I'd like that we bring back an old Italian-style pope, like John the 23rd and Paul VI. And I said, that would be great. He said, and another thing, if it comes back, we get an old Italian, we should get the Latin Mass back. And, of course, the Latin Mass, for those of you who don't know, is the traditional form of the Mass that a lot of conservatives like.
Newsmax founder and CEO Christopher Ruddy with hosts Tom Basile and Lydia Serrani there in Rome. So President Trump would like a more traditional old Italian pope, as would I. Not necessarily old, but Italian. But I am slightly biased. I grew up in a Roman Catholic church, Christ the King, in Kings Park, New York. For those of you that may know it, you have to admit, as a kid, you couldn't stand the old Latin Mass, right? Trump is saying it would be nice to bring back the Latin Mass. I couldn't stand that as a kid. As Tom Basile said earlier, tens of thousands of people are in St. Peter's Square. This is a woman from Chicago.
We're just so divided as a world. So it would be nice to just have someone with a lot of love.
There will be plenty of coverage from Rome throughout the day and the night on Newsmax for this historical event and historical day. May 8th already has a place in history. as the day President Harry Truman and other Allied leaders announced the surrender of Germany in World War II.
This is a solemn but a glorious hour. The forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations. The flags of freedom fly all over Europe.
President Harry Truman, 80 years ago today, and this was Winston Churchill.
But let us not forget for a moment the toils and efforts that lie ahead. Japan, with all her treachery and greed, remains unsubdued.
Known as Victory in Europe Day, this is President Trump at the White House.
As a victory day for World War II, commemorating the 80th anniversary of America's victory in the Second World War. All over the globe, our World War II allies are celebrating this week, but the United States has never joined in with the proper celebration of our own, and the victory was mostly accomplished because of us. Whether you like it or not, we came into that war and we won that war, and we had a lot of help from a lot of great people, a lot of great allies. But I think there would be nobody that would say that we were not the dominant force in that war, and we don't celebrate it. And I think that's a great disservice to the people that lost their lives and people that fought so hard in winning World War II, and also a separate victory day for World War I, and we're going to be doing that too. It was American tanks and ships and trucks and airplanes and service members that vanquished the enemy 80 years ago this week. Without America, the liberation would never have happened. And so we have to pay tribute and homage to those people that gave us victory. And we did something else that people don't talk about. We rebuilt the world. All of these countries that were destroyed, we helped them rebuild. And that's something that, for the most part, others did not do. So with this proclamation, we are hereby honoring the incredible sacrifice and heroism of millions of Americans who served in World War II, along with the unprecedented mobilization, home front that helped deliver this great triumph. All Americans should take pride in what these incredible patriots have achieved. So I just want to say happy Victory Day to all. So we are celebrating every year now. I can guarantee for 4 years, but I think after that we're going to have 2 Victory Days, World War I and World War II. This is World War II Victory Day. In the future, we're going to have a major celebration of each day. We're not going to have days off because we don't have enough days in the year. We have too many celebrations already. But we're going to have Victory Day and for World War I, World War II. And without us, those wars would not have been won. I think we can say that, would not have been won. And I think it's time that the United States starts taking credit for their achievements. And I really believe it's a shame. You know, I was watching for the last week, and I noticed France, I noticed other countries all getting ready for Victory Day. And I said, that's sort of strange, because David just added something. He said, we also rebuilt the world. And I didn't have that, and I should have that. That was a big factor. But I noticed all of the countries, Russia, having a big day tomorrow. And by the way, they lost millions of people. And they were absolutely a major factor. But there was no major factor like us. We won the war, and we won it with the help of others. But everybody was celebrating but the United States of America. And I said, you know, I think it's time that we start celebrating victory. And that's what we're doing.
President Trump, before the swearing in of former Georgia Senator David Purdue as the new U.S. Ambassador to the People's Republic of China.
Mr. President, I'm humbled to be in this office today. I love what you've done with this office. I like the Declaration of Independence. I want the world to know that I know this man personally. He loves this country, and I am glad to be your man in China. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Well, Mr. Purdue certainly has his work cut out for him, right? And a day before her confirmation hearing, the president has pulled the nomination of Dr. Jeanette Nesswat as U.S. Surgeon General, replacing her with Dr. Casey Means as the new pick. President Trump and First Lady Melania participating in a celebration of military mothers in the East Room of the White House this afternoon. After sitting down for an interview at the BBC for some reason, President Biden and former First Lady Jill Biden are on The View today. I'm sure you will hear plenty about this throughout the day. Even one of the co-hosts of The View, Alyssa Farah Griffin, told CNN, people are ready to move on. No Democrats want to see him out there. Whoopi and Joy probably didn't like to hear that from one of their co-hosts, but Griffin said, with due respect to the former president, most former presidents give their legacy some time to breathe. I think of Jimmy Carter. When he lost, he didn't go out there and do a lot of interviews. If I were giving advice to Joe Biden, it'd be give your legacy some time to breathe. Because most everybody, even the people that want it to be a good legacy, are trying to figure out what the legacy is going to be. In the meantime, your man Rob Schmitt has reaction to Biden's BBC interview yesterday.
Welcome to Rob Schmitt tonight. 1 year ago, Joe Biden was running for re-election. The media was covering his dementia and fear-mongering the potential return of Trump as Americans swelled with nostalgia for his far more competent administration. Then in June, Joe Biden debated Trump, and the Democrat Party ousted him immediately, choosing to witness a different disaster in Kamala Harris. Biden basically disappeared toward the end of his presidency. We've seen glimpses of him since, fumbling through speeches to snag a quick $300,000. But this week, the crooked old man sat down with the BBC for a 30-minute interview. Biden started by claiming that Trump is a threat to freedom and democracy and NATO because he's refusing to fund an endless war in Ukraine. Even the BBC host, hand-selected to give an easy interview here, couldn't help but admit that Trump does have a point when he calls out NATO and Europe for freeloading off American wealth and strength.
You know what they're saying in this administration. The U.S. Defense Secretary talks about European freeloading. The Vice President talks about your country, the United States, bailing out Europe. There's an anger there. Have they not got a point?
No, they don't have a point.
No, they don't have a point. They don't have a point? Trump doesn't have a point? The Europeans, as we all know, hide behind our military and thank us with tariffs and trade barriers to artificially protect their lazy economies and subsidize their wealth with ours. I'd say it's pretty clear that Trump has a point. If the BBC says he has a point, he probably does. Biden responded to all of this by then talking about 9/11.
Well, of all the NATO nations, almost all of them are 2% right now. But what they've done is, when we were attacked, what happened on 9/11? They all responded, support us. Look, imagine there being no NATO.
So Biden touting the meager assistance that we received after 9/11 as proof of why NATO is so important. So why are they even talking about this? Well, it's all about Ukraine, of course, which isn't even a NATO country. But they tell us it's also not about Ukraine, why we've spent $200 billion there. It's about NATO nations near Ukraine. Who would that be? Well, that would be Poland. Let's do a comparison. Let's go back to 2001, 9/11, the United States gets hit and we quickly invade Afghanistan. At that point, how important was NATO? How much help was Poland when we went into Afghanistan? Well, the Poles sent 300 troops. That's how important NATO is to us. 300 troops. We sent thousands, tens of thousands. Fast forward 20 years, Russia invades Ukraine, making Poland nervous. We cover 3/4 of the cost of a war against Russia. And that right there is NATO in a nutshell. We are NATO. The rest are just along for the ride, contributing marginally at best. But not in Joe Biden's eyes, of course, who claimed that most countries are now close to paying 2% of their NATO obligations, without admitting that Trump is actually the reason that even that is happening. Biden says world leaders have told him they're terrified that Trump's going to end NATO. What they really mean is that they're terrified they're going to have to start funding their own militaries.
Rob Schmitt tonight is at 7 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax, and here is more of the interview and commentary from David Harris Jr. filling in on Finnerty.
We left at a time when we had a good candidate. She was fully funded. And what happened was I had become what we had set out to do, no one thought we could do. And become so successful on our agenda, it was hard to say, no, I'm going to stop now.
Are you kidding me? Do you know how delusional you have to be to think that? Joe Biden's presidency brought us the highest inflation since Jimmy Carter. Eggs became a luxury. Cost of living skyrocketed. War broke out in Europe and in the Middle East. And now we're learning, according to a DoD IG report, that Biden's failed floating Gaza pier left 62 U.S. personnel injured, 1 service member dead. Also cost at least $31 million in damage. And the reason being that the military did not provide the training needed or the manpower and maintenance required to execute the mission. But Joe Biden says he just couldn't step down because of his raging success as president. We all know why he didn't step down. It's the same reason for every politician. Power. No one likes to walk away from power if they don't have to. Unfortunately for old Joe, he had to walk away eventually. Why? Because of incompetence and the fact that he was losing his marbles. And oddly enough, this also came up on Capitol Hill today. Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent testified before Congress on the global financial system. And this was a great moment.
Let me ask this question. Maybe I missed it. Who was the president? And who has been the president since January 20th, 2025?
Donald J. Trump.
Okay. And who was the president in 2024?
One believes President Biden.
One believes?
Yeah, well, they say he was president, but then there's that old auto pen issue as well. So who was really signing things? But once again, the left is incapable of accepting truths, just like the fictional statue character and Joe Biden saying he had a successful presidency. The Democrats are unable to accept the fact that Joe Biden wasn't in charge of his own presidency. How can a man who gets lost, forgets what town he's in, rambles and mumbles and falls asleep during official events, how can you believe that he, in fact, was running the country? Well, if you're a Democrat, you'll believe just about anything. You'll celebrate fictional characters, believe Joe Biden was successful, and you'd believe Joe was actually aware that he was president. They're like children. They believe any tall tale.
Some good stuff from David Harris Jr. on Finnerty last night. And by the time you're listening to me, the Biden's appearance on The View is likely going viral already. Jill Biden also announced that she has landed a new job with the Milken Institute in California, leading an initiative aimed at improving women's health. Does she not know that Joe got $80 million, allegedly, from Ukraine? I mean, does she need a job? My first thought was, well, she probably got the job, just to get out of the house and get away from Joe. But the Milken Institute is in California, so I suppose she's going to be working remotely. But at least she can go in the home office and say, I'm working, and get away from Joe, right? Let's get an update on the rising conflict between India and Pakistan. This is Carl Higbie with retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt and foreign policy expert Fred Fleitz, the former NSC Chief of Staff.
General, you obviously had a role in NATO, too, when you were active duty military. They're both nuclear powers, and they're shooting each other's planes down.
Yeah, these tensions have gone on for a long time. April 22nd, there was a terror event in Kashmir that made it all bubble over. It's very dangerous because they both are nuclear powers, but I believe they'll show restraint here. The thing that is we have to be cautious about is India cut off the Indus River going into Pakistan through its dam. That's very, very concerning. So both sides have landed blows on each other. I'm hoping they'll back away and be more pragmatic. I think that's what will happen. If not, we all have to look at China as a possibility here in Pakistan's corner.
Like, I've looked into this. Like, I can't identify the root cause of this war other than just, like, escalating tensions over the years. Like, what do they actually want to achieve here?
Yeah, so
the Kashmir area...
go ahead, Fred.
Sorry, Fred, go ahead.
The Kashmir area has been a tinderbox for decades. There's overlapping territorial claims. There are terrorist groups in Pakistan that killed groups of Indian tourists into the area. Pakistan claims that India will not resolve the territorial differences. India is doing things that's against the interest of what Pakistan wants done in the region. Both states are doing things to needle the other. It's gone on for a long time. There's constant weapons being fired across the border that don't result in any skirmishes, but it's been a tinderbox for a long time.
And General, that's kind of my point here, is like there's so many things, and usually Donald Trump is the first to jump in and say, hey, let's negotiate something, let's make a deal. It doesn't appear like any deal can be made. They're just doing stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure there's phone calls going into both capitals, but here's the cool thing back home. The left doesn't know which way President Trump is breaking on this. He hasn't picked a side, and so they're all having bleeding eyeballs because they just want to pick the side that President Trump's not on. And what I think President Trump's smartly doing is just working quietly to get this thing tamped down and restore stability. And I think that will come. But it is amazing to watch D.C. go into paralysis mode just because he won't pick a side.
Yeah.
Retired Air Force Brigadier General Blaine Holt and former NSC Chief of Staff in the first Trump administration, Fred Fleitz, on Frontline with Carl Higbie. General Holt mentioned China, right, being in Pakistan's corner. Today, India says it intercepted Pakistani missiles that were made in China. Let's wrap it up with an update from Sebastian Gorka, who spoke about India and Pakistan, as well as the big announcement expected this morning from President Trump.
Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Counterterrorism, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Good morning, sir, my friend. So as you and I have discussed for years, the President's use of economic and trade as a weapon and a diplomatic tool should be the Trump doctrine. This is a big deal for Europe, America, and really the rest of the world.
It is the quintessence of the art of the deal. Good morning, Mark. I literally, as I was walking up to the Newsmax camera here, I bumped into Brooke Rawlings getting out of her government vehicle. She's going to be part of this announcement this morning. It's big. It's historic. America is no longer going to be exploited by those who are gaming the global system. We're not going to be the piggy bank to those who are playing fast and loose with the rules of international trade. It's a big day here in the White House, as it has been for the last, whatever it is, 110 days. Just trying to keep up with the president is hard enough, but it's America first, especially this morning, Mark.
Hey, Seb, can you give us any kind of preview of anything that's in this deal?
If I would, I don't think I'd have my job by this afternoon. So the fact that Brooke Rawlings she cancelled. She was on her way to engagement somewhere else in the United States yesterday evening when she was told 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, be here. So I think you can guess some aspects of the deal. You can tell by my deep Alabamian accent that I'm super excited about this one, given where I was born, special relationships and everything else. The president has hinted enough, but let's just say that this is the beginning of a tsunami of similar announcements that are just going to make the economy of the first Trump administration, which was the biggest the world had ever seen, look small by comparison. So this is really a historic day here at the White House.
Yeah, we'll be watching just a couple hours. So the president deals with trade and tariffs. There's also the continuing war in the Middle East. Eastern Europe and now India and Pakistan fighting. What do you think needs to be done to get India and Pakistan to calm things down? Those are two nuclear powers fighting each other.
Well, it's exactly what happened. I was here when that event occurred across the border in the line of control. I immediately was called to the Situation Room, a room Mark knows very well under the West Wing. I sat there literally next to the acting National Security Advisor, Marco Rubio, and the rest of the NSC team. He got on the phone immediately to the parties involved, to both the governments in Islamabad and the Indian government, and he just had a very simple message. The Secretary of State said, let cooler heads prevail, because, as you said, this is two nuclear nations. Sadly, there has been a history of conflict in that region for decades now, but we are very relieved to have Secretary Rubio in the position of acting National Security Advisor, because people listen to him because they know he represents the president, and we don't want more conflict in the world. We want to resolve conflict, whether it's there, whether it's in Ukraine, or whether it's in Gaza.
Senior Director of Counterterrorism and Deputy Assistant to President Trump, that's Sebastian Gorka on Wake Up America. The president said this morning he struck a comprehensive deal with the UK. That will be part of his big announcement, I'm sure. A couple of other headlines. According to the NYPD, more than 80 anti-Israel protesters were arrested at Columbia University yesterday after they stormed the library in masks. Students there getting ready for finals. School officials wasted no time in calling the cops, and now ICE officials are going over the arrests. And as you know, some states' governors are attempting to stand in the way of the Trump administration's immigration policies. And some, like Governor Janet Mills of Maine, are defying the administration's ruling on transgender athletes in women's sports. However, several school districts in Maine this week have now banned transgender athletes from girls' sports, defying the Democratic governor and siding with the Trump administration. On Wall Street, stocks started the day well into the green after closing in the green yesterday. If you were paying attention, the markets did take a bit of a dive after Jerome the Profit Killer Powell held interest rates steady because he said that the tariffs were creating too much uncertainty in the economy. But thankfully, the markets quickly recovered. Diet company Weight Watchers, founded in 1963, has filed for bankruptcy. I think Oprah actually owns a good part of that company, certainly owns a lot of their stock. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are higher this morning as well. At the time of this recording, Bitcoin was up more than $3,000 at $99,200. Ethereum up more than $160 over $1,900. XRP was up about a dime, 9 or 10 cents at $2.21. All right, it is going to be another super busy day. Big announcement, another big announcement coming from the White House. Who knows what other announcements will come from the White House, and all the news out of Rome. Keep up with it all on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com. It all starts each and every morning with Wake Up America, followed by National Report, Newsline with Bianca De La Garza, American Agenda, Carl Higbie, John Bachman, Greta Van Susteren, Ed Henry, Rob Schmitt tonight, Finnerty at 8, Greg Kelly reports, The Right Squad, and so much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Share it with your friends, family, and anybody else. Enjoy the rest of your day, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.